You're listening to the Show We Go Baseball podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 62 of To the Show We Go. We got Chris Henrique and myself, Andrew Parker. Today's episode, it is the Stephen Nogosek episode. If you aren't too familiar with him, I know we do have a lot of New England following, but I know we're starting to venture out a little bit. But he was a Red Sox prospect once upon a time. We had him on a show probably last offseason, and we talked about the trade and we talked about, his time there and everything. But this one, we're going to veer towards, the present, like what's gone on in 2023 for him. He's been with the Mets for the past few seasons, and then he went over to a different system. And I'm going to get into that here first. But and then you're the newest Washington National. Now, actually, just this week you were signed. At least it got announced this week. So, Stephen, I'm going to steal my first question from my guy Chris over here because he brought it up to me, and I was curious about it too. But how did the fire pit go?
The what?
Last time we talked to you, you were building a fire pit in the backyard.
It works. It did not turn out how I wanted. There was way more gravel and rock and like big boulders in the soil that I didn't realize. And so with the shovel, that's just it didn't pan out how I wanted to. It still looks good. I made it look pretty. But once the new homeowner, if we ever sell this house, is going to look at it and dig it up and kind of be like, oh, okay, what in the world is going on here? But we got the job done. The biggest thing was keeping the dogs out of the fire pit because before it was just kind of like a top layer of frozen soil that had been in there. And so now it's all fresh dirt and they just want to get in there and dig, but it panned out. It worked. It's not a professional job, but it does the job.
So I think I remember when we had you on last offseason, you were, I think, in the middle of building it, or you were very early on.
Yeah.
So I figured it was probably done by now, but was just curious how the update went.
Yeah. I finished it last offseason. And I've used it a few times this year. The wife's not a big fan of it because she doesn't want to sit out in the cold no matter how good the fire is when the house is right there.
It's fair. Yeah, I can't argue with it, I guess. Yeah. But all right. Well, I did want to kind of jump into a little bit of your previous season here. I know you were with two different orgs. Obviously, you were with New York, then you finished it off in Arizona system. What was your 2023? I guess if you had to kind of talk about it a little bit and just now that you're into the off season, actually about to report this month, but like, how did it go for you? Like, what were some takeaways you had from your 23 as a whole?
It was definitely a struggle. It wasn't my best year. I think there was a lot of things that I tried to change and not necessarily become a new pitcher, but, try to get on the trend of the sweeper and throw that more. And it took away from what I do best and my strengths in the hard slider, big fastball, attack the zone. And I didn't have the same stuff that I had in 22 when I had all the success. But I think all in all, I think it was a big learning experience. And then my time with the Mets, like, I still love them, still have great relationships with the Mets. And I think transitioning to Arizona, they were more on the trend of get back to your hard slider, get back to where you were in 22. And it started off great. I started throwing the ball really well, even in the PCL with a high elevation where my fastball wasn't what it normally was. With the invisible elevation kind of takes that away. But I was still able to adjust, attack the zone, and have success. And then kind of saw that my velo was down from the year before and tried to make some adjustments. And that's when it went down the rabbit hole, and it wasn't great, but finished the year strong. I was happy with how I finished. And I think there was a lot to build off of from that. And so coming into the 23 offseason, it was getting back to what I do best in a big fastball, hard slider. And there's been a huge emphasis on that. And added a curveball that I really like, and I think it's going to be a big weapon for me this year against lefties. And just getting back to, where I was in 22 stuff-wise, but also mentality-wise, body-wise, strength-wise, everything. Because I felt like in 22, that's where my stuff was meant to be. And so the whole offseason was spent on getting back to that and improving it. And I feel very, very confident going into 2024 with the stuff I have, where my body's at, where my mind's at. And I'm super excited about joining the Nationals organization. I played in the International League for 5 years. And so I'm comfortable there. I'm comfortable in the Northeast and comfortable with the NL East and ready to get to work. I can't wait to get down there.
You had mentioned with the pitch selection, and it seems like a lot of players are incorporating the sweeper or slider, however you want to phrase that. Why do you think that it maybe just didn't work for you?
I think everyone's different, right? And I think for me in 22, I threw the sweeper as kind of a change of pace, but it felt comfortable. How it felt off the hand, the movement profile, all that was good. In 23, I never really got a good feel for it. I was trying to have it as my primary off speed. And I think that's where, if you aren't confident in your second pitch, it kind of messes with everything else. And that's kind of how it was, is I wasn't confident in the sweeper. But on the scouting reports and that it said the sweeper is the pitch to throw to the guy. But if you aren't confident in it, I look back now and I'm like, in the moment you're trying to make the best decisions. But obviously when you look back, hindsight 2020, you're like, maybe that wasn't the best decision, right? And we look at the results and that. But I think for certain guys, the sweeper works, and for certain guys, the sweeper doesn't. And that's where all of us are unique. No two sweepers are the same. No two sliders are the same, right? And so you have to find what you do best, what you're most comfortable with, and also what you execute the best. Because I could have a sweeper now that's, right where I want it to be, but if I can't execute it, it's worthless. So I think that's where, kind of going back to the hard slider of where I was in 22, where my execution rate was high, the pitch itself was good, the profile is good. Now that gives me the confidence to go out and, if it's a 2-1 count with second and third, one out, and I got to execute here, I'm confident that I can. Instead of the sweeper where it was kind of like, I don't know how this is going to go. So
it is always interesting to me to hear like the origin stories behind those, because we had Nick Robertson on a few episodes ago. He's with the Cardinals now, but he how he originated it, and it's been a successful pitch for him. He got traded to the Red Sox this past year. Now he's been traded to the Cards, but that's like one of his like go-to pitches. And then you have a guy also like here, Nick Pivetta, talking about his whirly bird sweeper slider pitch, whatever he wants to call it. And how successful it made him this past season. He wasn't even throwing that like before this past season, and he's been in the league for like 6 years now. It's like, it's kind of crazy, man. It'll work for some guys, like you said for yourself, just didn't work for you.
Yeah. To jump on that too, do you think that that's like, because it feels like a lot of the Red Sox are heavy into that. There's a lot of guys on the Sox in the org that are doing that. Do you think that that's just kind of like the flavor of the month type of thing right now? You know what I mean? Like some analytics guy said that this works, and now a shit ton of people are doing it. And
I think it's a little combination of both, right? It's kind of like the wave of the four seam up in the zone, right? All of a sudden that took the league by storm, and then all of us started doing it. And then now, like, you'll constantly see these trends, and that's been in the game since baseball started of, hey, what's working? What across the league are hitters not seeing? And, then the hitters adjust to what we're doing, and then we have to make a change. And it's the game within the game, I think it's the game. Like, I think when something like this happens to where, sweepers are the big thing right now, everyone's kind of throwing a sweeper. You're starting to see sweeper on the scoreboard, and it's not labeled as a slider. And I think, it works for some guys. And like you said, there's certain guys that it's their pitch, right? And I think everyone, as soon as, just like when four seam started taking the league by storm, everyone tried to throw a four seam. But then there's certain guys who are like, that's not my strength. I'm going to stick to what I'm doing. I just got to execute it in these different ways to be successful, right? Adam Ottavino was a huge impact on me because of how he constantly talked about, every year I try to do something different. I have to. If you do the same thing every single year, they're going to catch on. And when you face a guy 10 times in a season, by that fifth time, they're like, I know what he's going to try to do to me. I know what he's going to throw me. I know in which counts he's going to throw certain pitches. And so you have to be different. You have to constantly change what you're doing. And, you may throw a right-on-right changeup to a guy that you faced 8 times this year because you've never thrown him a right-on-right changeup, and it's not on the scouting report. But it produces an out, and then you go back to what you do. So there's certain things that are going to constantly be kind of new waves coming in to baseball. And I think the sweeper is that new wave of kind of everyone's trying it, and then you learn whether you can do it or not. It doesn't mean that hard sliders aren't still really, really good. It doesn't mean that a fastball down and away still isn't the hardest pitch to hit in baseball. And so there's certain things that are staples, but there's always going to be the new wave of something that guys are trying to do to get guys out. Because that's our whole job, is just trying to find new ways to get guys out.
So we've talked to quite a few guys this offseason that, have been absolutely hyping up. We've talked to quite a few Cressy guys. There's been some guys working out West Coast. I saw you were with Tread, which has a pretty good reputation in their own. So how has that changed your offseason, I guess, just like being in there and just being around like the minds there? Because I always hear guys down in Florida, like there's a million guys in Florida, Cressy, and all you see like is they're pumping out all the stuff on Instagram, and they're hyping up. They're like, oh well, like all the best minds go here. So like, I guess, how has it been for you at Tread this offseason?
I love Tread. I love my coach at Tread, Drew Hall. He's helped me out a bunch. And so I work remotely, obviously, because I'm in Oregon. And out in Oregon, we don't have a ton of stuff. We have, Driveline in Seattle, in Arizona. When I was with Arizona, there was just a lot of guys who work with Tread, and I was seeing all their stuff on Instagram. I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. And because I didn't feel right on the mound and trying to figure some stuff out. And one thing about like Tread or Driveline or whatever Cressy you go to, like, it's not going to be an overnight change. All right, you're going to have to put in the work and really, because you're trying to, like, for me, I'm trying to break habits that I've had for 20 years, ever since I was a little kid, right? It's like, this is my timing, and it's like, well, now we have to break that time. All right, and being able to get the mocap reports, and it's like, this is how your body's moving, this is how we're going to benefit you, and this is how you're going to throw 98. Or for me, it was just getting back to 95, 97 that I was in 22 instead of being 93, 95. Like, anything over 97, that's a plus. And working with them every single day, and even if I'm throwing in my garage, I would post a video on the garage door, or posted my phone on the garage door, take a video, send it to him. He'd respond that night and be like, hey, these are my thoughts on it, right? And then you go out and you kind of feel what he's saying. And then when I went out to Tread for Pro Day, we got like a week free for Pro Day. And I mean, they instantly made me feel way more comfortable on the mound in a matter of 3 days. just by loosening everything up, being loose, being free, getting back to being athletic. And it was like, bam, right away, all of a sudden I set a new PR for my indoor velocity off a mound. And it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's exciting to see. Like, I haven't hit 93 off an indoor mound ever. And then I just sat 93 in pro day. So that's exciting. So
was this your first offseason? This was your first offseason with Tread?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess now that you've signed and you have a report date now, what was, I guess, just your biggest takeaway on whatever you were doing previously to what you're doing now?
I think the big thing is, in the past, I had this huge emphasis on the weight room training. And I would, work out, and then go throw. And this year, Dan Straley, I don't know if you guys remember that name.
Yeah.
So we've worked out for the past 5 off seasons together. And he was like, hey, this year I have a new plan for us. And I was like, okay. And he's like, let's take 80% of our energy and focus on pitching. And then we'll save the 20% for the workouts. Like, let's put our focus on throwing and emphasize that, because that's what we get paid to do, instead of draining ourselves in the weight room and then having an exhausted throwing session. And so I think instantly that made us better, because we're focusing all of our energy on the thing we actually do, and then have the weight room complement us on the mound, right? And so that instantly made us, like, in the weight room, yeah, we're still getting just as much work in, and we're still grinding just as hard, working just as hard, doing just as much for a workout. But we spent a longer time while we were fresh on the mound doing what we needed to do. So instead of, throwing where, you're exhausted from the workout and you just can't get as much on the fastball or as much on the slider, you don't have the same feeling because you're exhausted from an hour and a half long workout. It's, well, I'm perfectly fresh, let's rock and roll. And then the workout, it's like, the workout, you get in a different mode and you just go, right? Like, for me, I'm not a huge weight, like, I don't like running. I hate it, actually. It's one of my least favorite things in the world. But running, I can sit there and get in a different mindset and just run and get it done, get my workout done, and then be good. But if I'm exhausted from the run and the lift, and then I go try to throw, right? Well, I'm cutting into how much focus I can really get into all 60 throws I make that day. So pushing it to the front is, I can focus on all 60 throws and have perfect focus for that and emphasize that, then do my workout. And then my run is just clear-minded, just get it done. Right. And so I think that's really, really helps us with our training. And also something with Tread that really helped me is, like, not only am I making those 60 throws, I'm recording every single throw and looking at every little detail in order to the point where I'm at now. Now it's just muscle memory, because I've done so many awkward reps that felt horrible. Well, now it feels good, and now it's fluid, and now it's coming out better, and everything's good. And it's like, okay, now that's where the next level of my training has really taken place, is like, now it's just, I'm throwing, it looks the same full speed, but if you really slow it down, my arm's in a completely different position. I'm able to use my legs and generate power and have hip shoulder separation and get out in front with the ball and have that front leg lock and all this stuff, that it's like, that's what's going to generate and get me back to 95, 97 instead of being 93, 95.
I want to switch lanes here. Obviously, we touched on it earlier, but you're newly signed to the Washington Nationals organization. So that's you're already familiar with the International League. Obviously, spending some time with New York and just being in Northeast, like you said. But what drew you to I guess to signing with the Nationals?
So we were talking with them for a while. And it was something to where, like, I think because I've played against them so much, I've seen the organization. seeing how they're ran, and it's like I like how they're run. It's a professional organization, and talking to my agent who has a relationship with the coordinator and all that. He has relationships with everyone, but he's like, hey, I think you're going to mesh really well with the coordination over there and the coaches and front office staff. And I think it was kind of a like, yeah, 100%. You're right. Is when I signed and I talked to John Wolf, who's the pitching coordinator over there. And it's just like, we've had 100 phone call conversations before, right? It was easy. It was here's the deal. Here's what we're thinking. And it's like, great. I like that plan. Let's do this. Let's do this. And it's just meshed really well. And everything was just solid. Right. And I'm like, okay, where I signed, I'm very happy with, and I'm just ready to get out there and get to work.
And I did want to go in reverse a little bit here. Sorry, I'm going out of order here, but I did just remember that obviously you had it was actually a signing. It wasn't even a trade last year when you switched organizations. You got to choose where you went. So obviously being with an organization like Arizona, obviously they had a lot of success at the major league level. And what was, I guess, did you kind of have like the same mindset from when you were technically a free agent last season to when you just were this offseason?
I think the big thing with that was, you're kind of mid-season, you're kind of looking for a job. You're like, I'm hot, I'm ready to go. I don't want to sit for 2 weeks. And I think Arizona and someone on the, I'm totally blanking, a team on the East Coast, those were the first 2 offers I had, right? And I was talking to my agent. I was like, hey, like I get to go out west and be closer to home, be closer to family for the first time in my professional career. Arizona, I've heard nothing but amazing things about them. They're a young organization, and my agent has very close friendships with the front office. And so they kind of said like, hey, we'd love to have him. And we want him out there. And I was like, all right, done deal. Let's do it. Right. And got out there, and that organization is amazing. The way it's run, the way they support you. And I think that is reflected in, them winning a World Series, when I think a lot of people would have been like, hey, congrats, you made playoffs. Like, but you're not this is about it. Right. And I think they surprised a lot of people, and I think they have a really, really bright future, and they aren't scared to, they'll push a prospect to the big leagues as you've seen. But it's more, they're ready for the big leagues. They have this emphasis of there's no moment too big. And down to the coaching staff in Reno with Lawley and that, it was just, the emphasis was to win and win often. And I think that is a huge reflection throughout the organization, and why they had so much success is, I don't care if you have us down 9-0, like the game's not over. We still have a chance. And so, yeah, I love my time with them. And so, yeah. I
like how there's more and more teams though across the league that are being more aggressive with promoting the players in the organization. Because when we, as Andrew mentioned before, when we had Brian Abraham on, we were talking about Shane Drowan, who started out on fire. I think it was like 5-0 down in AA, elevated up to AAA. He was challenged there, saw some good things, saw some things that didn't really work for him. But I do like the fact that teams are doing that now. They are being more aggressive with these younger players, challenge you guys at different levels of, and I mean, even if the first go around may not work, at least you kind of get to see what didn't work, or if it did work, it kind of does get you prepared for that ultimate next step. So I think teams that are doing more of that continue to do it, because I think it's only just going to get, I think, fans too more acclimated to to a bigger pool of players than when, a player signs like, oh, I never heard of this guy. And then it's, it gets trashed on the social media piece. So I like that. I think the game is definitely shifting in the right direction.
I think there's a level of like having, your prospects ready, but then also valuing, guys who have time and have done it, and there's not a measurable stat of knowledge and experience, right? You can't measure a guy's knowledge on a computer. And so there's this level of, if I have second and third, one out, and I'm like the situation I just talked about, 2-1, and I'm going to throw a slider, it's like, I don't have to throw a just cookie strike there. Like, I got to have the knowledge of, like, I'm trying to get this guy to chase or roll over or just weak contact. And like, if I walk him, like, okay, like now I have double play anywhere. Like, and that's a little knowledge of a game when the game starts speeding up that is irreplaceable. Right. And so when you have a guy, when you see teams, cause I've seen it on, well, I guess X now, it's not Twitter. Yeah. On X.
Same thing.
But fans being like, well, why are we signing this 34-year-old guy who hasn't pitched in the big league since when? It's like, well, do you understand how much knowledge and experience that guy has? Like, you put him in the big leagues, he's going to sit there and be like, yeah, I've done this a while now. Like, I'm pretty locked in. Like, the stuff is the stuff. Like, but when you get on the mound and all of a sudden there's situations where, you can read a hitter's swing. I remember when I was 24 and got called up to the big leagues, I wasn't reading a hitter's swing. I was just listening to whatever Wilson Ramos or Nito put down. Like, fastball away. Okay, I'm going to try to throw a fastball away. And then now it's like, no, now it's like, if I throw a fastball and I'm thinking that next pitch I'm going to throw a slider and I look at his swing, I'm like, okay, he's waiting for a slider, right? So those are the things I'm looking at now, to where earlier in my career when I was younger, it's like I wasn't. So there's the value of, like, your prospects that are ultra talented and able to do all these things, and the value of a veteran guy who has the knowledge and has the experience and has that. I think there's something to be said of kind of, you need a mix of that in your organization and in your locker room. And I think that's exactly what you look at, like the Diamondbacks. They had all this youth talent that was just unbelievable. And then you have guys like Evan Longoria who have 87 years in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And it's like that knowledge and could teach it to the next generation that's coming up. And then, those guys, the younger guys, start looking at stuff like that. So I think there's a good balance of that and what makes great teams.
Would you consider yourself a veteran at this point?
I've been called a veteran and I don't like it because I think I'm not there yet. But I mean, I'm going on my 8th, 9th year of pro ball, and it's time's flying by. And I told joking around with the wife, I was like, I'm closer to retiring than I am the start of my career. And I was like, that is
crazy.
Like, I mean, hopefully I can play to 35, 36, but that's in 36 is 7 years away. And I was like, and I started this 8-9 years ago, and I'm like, I know I still have a lot left in me, and I'm not close to done, but I'm like looking, I'm like, I'm not a young buck anymore. I'm kind of like, and when I showed up in the Reno locker room with the D-backs, I was like the second oldest guy, and I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, and by like a lot, like everyone was 22, 23, 21, 19. I'm like, yeah. And they were like, hey, like, you're a veteran, like, lead by it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that title yet. But so, yeah.
I was curious because I was kind of looking. I'm like, holy cow! Like, and you had just brought it up that you made your debut. Like, I mean, it feels like it's like been 7-8 years ago at this point. It's just like it's absolutely nuts. And we're still on the right side of 30. I know. I'm a 94 kid. You're 95. Like we're floating right there, right before we do hit 30, and the knees start creaking in the morning. So we're a little close to that point, but
yeah.
That part of my question, though, I wanted to ask the veteran thing. So you're going into a new system, new spring training complex, new teammates, coaches, everything. I guess my question would be like, what are you going to do that maybe you didn't do before? Like, are you going to take on like a a veteran hat maybe and mentored young guys? Like, I guess, how does that look for you now that you're in a new org and starting over?
Well, I think one of the big things is, my job's – sorry, wife's headed out. I got to give her laptop.
Oh, it's all good.
She's headed home. Our dogs are outside, so she's got to go take care of it. I think the big thing is I've always tried to give any knowledge I have to anyone who will ask, right? And I think that's the veteran leadership that guys talk about. But I've done that when I was got called up to AA for the first time, right? And someone gets called up to AA, and they're like, okay, well, how does all this work? Because at least it was the first time that you packed your bags in the locker and then someone transported it to the bus for you, right? And it's that's a huge deal. You feel like you're a king now. And it's someone who just got called up was like, what do I do? And I'm like, okay, this, and this, right? And then, we were constantly talking pitching in the bullpen, but I think my number one goal in going in an organization is get back to the big leagues and help the team win. I think, I've been around and have pitched in multiple organizations, and this is my 8th, 9th year, whatever it is, in pro ball. But I mean, my goal is not to be a veteran leader in AAA. My goal is to pitch in the big leagues and help win a World Series and do what I can for whatever organization I'm with. And so I think that's the number one goal is, prove that I'm not a AAA veteran, right? I don't want to be labeled as that title when I'm done playing. I want to be the guy who was like, oh yeah, I remember facing him in the big leagues. He was nasty. He was good. And he came after you. He attacked you. He wasn't a fun at bat. And so I think that's my number one goal. And within that, it's while I'm there and while I'm, in AAA, it's how can I help the next generation, right? So that's kind of a secondary thing is I think the biggest thing in what I was taught when I first got up to AAA was veterans aren't going to go up to you all the time and just teach you everything they know. You got to talk to them. You got to ask. You got to talk baseball. You got to be around it. We're around the game all the time, so learn as much as possible, right? And ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. And so I think that's kind of a secondary thing. But my number one thing is get back to the big leagues and be a major league arm for the next 6-7 years.
I have a speed run of questions for you that I think we can get through in less than 5 minutes if you're about it.
The key though is less than 5 because Andrew keeps saying I can get it done in less than 5.
I can get it done in 3, but it's
no. You have not done 3 minutes yet, but I have an idea too on some of the questions, so I may have a follow up or two after his lightning round, so that way we can see if he gets within the 5.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let me set the stopwatch. Hang on.
Are you ready for this, Stephen? It's something I've incorporated. It's a newer concept I've done, and I think it's going over pretty well.
All right. Let's do it.
All right. Chris, you got the stopwatch?
Yeah, I got to reset it. I thought you were going to speak. Sorry.
All right. Movies, shows, or live TV?
Shows.
What is the best game you've ever played in your professional career?
Oh. Best game? Probably. Oh, I don't even know. I'm making this horrible. My best personal performance was San Francisco 22.
Okay. What song will be the walkout song in 24 and why?
Bury My Bones. I think it kind of gets me in that outlaw mentality.
Ooh, okay. All right. By the age of 35, you want to have accomplished what?
World Series win.
So if there was one rule in the MLB or the minor leagues that you could change, what would it be? Fair. That's the first time we got that one. Favorite athlete outside of baseball?
Jimmy Johnson, NASCAR.
Oh. Legend. Favorite TV show of all time?
Of all time? Probably Life below zero.
Never heard of that one. Gotta look that one up.
Wow.
Weirdest baseball superstition that you have or that you've seen in person?
I don't have it anymore. I did though. I stopped it late last year. It was right sock on left foot, left sock on right foot.
It's our second one in a row of that.
Yeah, it's a weird,
Okay.
weird thing.
I think Nick Robinson said the exact same thing. All right, this one might be a tougher question. Who is the player that you've played with or against that's left you thinking like, damn, they're the best player I've ever seen in person?
DeGrom.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, it's a joke.
So, what is a guilty pleasure of yours?
Guilty pleasure? Chips. I got like most people have sweet tooth. Like I have like salt tooth and like crumb tooth. Like potato chips are. If they're around, like if we have them in the locker room, like I'm crushing all of them probably. Like I've had to come into the locker room with chips because I was like I crushed all these. So sorry.
Don't want the new nutritionist find that out.
Yeah.
What is the most stressful part about owning restaurants?
Everything.
Yeah, I picked the most stressful part. Like, oh man, that thing.
Well, first, I don't own them. My wife owns them. I'm a free employee.
Okay.
But I would say, like, I think her answer would just be, like, I would say like trying to make everyone happy and trying to do food items that everyone enjoys, because it's not like it's not like a sports gym to where you're only trying to make the athletes and that happy. Like you have to make food items for every single person in every single diet. So I think that would be but I don't know. I don't own them. I'm
Okay,
just
fair
not
enough.
Day to day. My most stressful thing is making sure I don't screw it up so she doesn't yell at me.
Fair. All right, we're gonna be on a food kick here. Food questions. I got three of them. Favorite fast food fried chicken chain?
Chick-fil-A. Yeah, Chick-fil-A.
Zaxby's was the correct answer. Raising Cane's good. While we're on the chicken kick, are you drums or flats guy?
Probably drums. I like flats, but I think drums, you get more meat out of it.
So you may have already answered this one with the chips answer, but what's your go-to pregame snack? Is it the chips?
No. I would say go-to pregame snack would be like probably a peanut butter and banana and honey sandwich. If I'm dragging, I'm like, I need some energy. That's my go-to.
All right. Worst topping to put on a pizza?
Pineapple.
Ooh, it's controversial, man.
It's horrible.
Okay. Final question of the speed round. I know I may have went over 5. I'm sorry about that, but
just 5:06.
Okay. All right. Well, this one doesn't really count to the speed round, but I did want to hit on it because I know Chris has a question about your beloved favorite football team to finish us off probably. But I was looking at, I don't know why. I watched this video before you hopped on. You got hit by a comebacker in Oakland this year. I think it hit you like right here. I think
it got me right here.
What does that feel like?
It felt like getting a football helmet to the elbow. Like it hurt, but it was like, all right, whatever. The big thing was, so when our trainer said, like, if my elbow was straight, it shattered everything in my elbow. But luckily it was bent. And so I got lucky and it hit. Everyone thought it just hit me in the back, but it actually hit my elbow first. And I was actually ready to go and wanted to throw another pitch. And then Lindor pointed to it and told Buck to look at it. And then I had a few laces on it and they were like, all right, you're done. They're like, there's no point in risking it. But x-rays came back negative and it was all good. And so, yeah.
All right, Chris, floor is yours to end us off here.
So I'm going to just jump back to the food theme because you were talking about your wife's restaurant, Brand 44 North.
Yep.
And I scoped out the menu earlier before we came on the podcast. And obviously I'm on the opposite side of the country, but I love the Benedict menu you guys have.
Yeah.
Like, it is impressive. I would try them all. The Smash Benny is the one I'm the most interested in.
Yeah.
So I like when I go to restaurants and they have a brunch menu or a breakfast menu and they have different takes on the Benedict. My favorite breakfast. So if I was to go there, the Smash Benny would be the one I'd get.
There's no wrong choice. I try to stay humble with it, but my wife knows food and she knows the restaurant industry, and I'm confident saying we have the best breakfast restaurant in Central Oregon. And like, if you come, bring your appetite, and how she has that place dialed in is impressive. That our favorite saying is, you can go there every day of the week and get something different and fall in love with a new menu item. So
no, I like that. Because I'm not like a massive foodie, but I definitely like to try new places. And when there's that brunch breakfast menu, I go right for the Bennies. And if you don't have a Benny on your brunch menu or breakfast menu, you kind of lose points with me there. The corned beef skillet sounded really good. That was on the menu. And the Buckin' Burger, only because I feel like when people order it, if they might have had a couple of cocktails or two, I bet you that it doesn't come out as Buckin' when they order it. But those are the few things that kind of jumped out at me. I'm not a Bloody Mary guy, but do you guys do a good Bloody Mary to pair with the breakfast?
The best.
Okay.
So the corned beef, like a lot of people, especially out west, it's kind of like it's really like mashed in. Well, we leave chunks, and so you actually get like chunks of corned beef instead of it all just mixed in together. And so she did it up right with that. Working as like a food runner, and while she's expoing, I mean, we get everything, right? So everything is ordered. Like, it's not like we have our hot, like the John Wayne casserole is my personal favorite.
That's it had the pancakes in it, right?
No, that has the biscuits on the bottom with our John Wayne mix on top with peppers, cheese, all sorts. I mean, it is.
What's the one that had the pancakes I was reading?
Like 17 different items.
Maybe.
I'm
not a big pancake person, but it just.
Yeah. And then she does the stuffed French toast that changes every week.
Oh, man.
I think this week's a chocolate covered strawberry for Valentine's Day mixed with vanilla.
Okay. Well, if anybody's listening and they're on the West Coast, specifically Oregon, definitely I would check it out. I mean, like I said, I went to the menu.
Yeah.
I remember last time we recorded, you were talking about how you were helping her and you kind of get it. Did you guys have two restaurants? Was it two?
Yeah. So we have the Pump House Bar and Grill, which is a restaurant that kind of doubles. Like, whenever people hear bar and grill, they're expecting it to be a bar, and it's like it's not like a college bar, or it's not like a bar. It's a restaurant. So we have a diner feel on one side that's like families and that, and then you go through our swing doors and it opens up to the bar side of it. But it's all tables. Like, you come for dinner, and then we have our lottery, and past 8 o'clock, then it kind of turns into a bar scene. But it's not. It's a country bar without the fights. Is how we kind of explain it.
No, it sounds like a good vibe. That's okay. You mentioned TV shows. I'll be honest with you. I'm not familiar with Life Below Zero, but I do want to ask you, what are one or two shows that you're doing like right now? Before, like, obviously, Spring Training is going to change that, but what's
So I watched Deputy Lawman Bass Reeves.
Okay.
So I'm very, very. I've thought about starting my own podcast with it, just kind of on the history and being a very but there's a lot of controversial topics that I think you have to cover when you do that. And so I don't think I'm going to, just because of that. and also the time it takes to do a podcast like that is absolutely insane. A research-based thing. But so Deputy Lawman Bass Reeves is one that I just finished the other night. Accuracy-wise, it is all over the place, not even close. But entertainment-wise, it was good. The other one, what was it? Oh, Avatar. Like The Last Airbender, like the OG old school Nickelodeon. I don't know why, but I got into that, and I've been crushing that. And so I'm on the last season of that. I don't know why, what made me get into it. I think I just saw it on Instagram and was like, you know what? I'm bored. Let's do it.
Yeah, I started up. I'm a big Larry David fan, so Curb Your Enthusiasm just came back out. It's on HBO. The first episode was Sunday night, and I've been doing. They got a different podcast now with that, so I've been hitting that up. My last one-off question, and then I'll kick it back to Andrew. You had some custom cleats made that I saw on your Instagram.
Yeah.
How did that come about? You know what I mean? Like it was cool because it's definitely your theme because you're big into hunting and outdoors, and it covered you to a T.
Well, I think it was more trying to cover Brand 44. And so right across the way from both of our restaurants is Smith Rock National Park. And that is, a big staple out here. And so it was getting that on a cleat and showcasing Brand 44. And, the elk is a big kind of logo symbol for us. We have elk antlers throughout the restaurant. And so I wanted something that would tie all that in there and also kind of blend in to where, it doesn't stand out. We have so many things that stand out in the restaurant: rodeo posters, elk antlers. We have a claw machine. We have all this stuff. And it just, she has my jersey in there that we framed that kind of has the community tie into it. And so I wanted to get cleats to go right below them. And then she moved the jersey to Pump House. So I guess I got to get Pump House cleats made now.
Well, Stephen, I think we have like 2 more minutes before we got to hop off. But I wanted to ask you, Super Bowl, obviously, this Sunday. I know you're a big Lions guy. We through and through Lions guy. I know a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon this past year.
Yeah.
It had to have been fun to watch that run for you, but I want to know, are you going to be watching the Super Bowl? And then I guess quick thoughts on, just how it ended for the Lions.
I'll watch the Super Bowl, but I'm not going to be bought into it at all. I can't. But I think the Lions season turned out exactly, at least what I expected it to be. I knew we were going to be really good, even though people may have said, "Oh, you're going to make playoffs," but that's it. I was like, no. I really like our team. I really like our offense, and I think the big thing is our defense stepped up huge in playoffs and when they had to throughout the season. But the 4th down call instead of kicking a field goal, and everyone's saying how Dan Campbell's made a poor decision. He's been doing it all year. If you watch Lions games, we were going for it on every 4th down. It didn't matter. We weren't playing for a tie. We were going for the win. And when he made that decision, I was like, I'm not surprised. Let's go. And when it didn't work out, I said, okay, we live and die by it. Like, Dan Campbell's my head coach. Jared Goff's quarterback. I'm pumped to get Ben Johnson back as our offensive coordinator. And I'm fired up for next year. And I looked at the Super Bowl leak, and our colors are in it. So Lions Super Bowl next year, done deal.
I did see the Honolulu blue on there. I think it was them in the Browns colors, I think. Was that Cleveland?
I don't know what the orange means, and I don't care. The Lions are in the Super Bowl, and we're going to win. That's that.
All right, man. Well, like I said, when we had you on last year, there was I think the Lions went undefeated maybe after that. I forgot what had happened.
7-1. Ever since
crazy.
Now we're going to go 27-0, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Stephen. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you for hopping on. I know you got a busy schedule before you're going with the restaurants and, just getting ready to drive across the country. So good luck with that. I hope we don't see you in Worcester this year. I know Rochester's there early June. I hope you're not in Rochester. So, but if so, we will see you then. But thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you for having me on. It's always a good time.